next, though. Jose and Irvine, how are you? Thanks for waiting.
Hi, Matt and Jen. It's really nice to talk to you guys. Well, the reason I'm calling is because people are open to the possibility that a God exists, even atheists. And
sure, some of them are.
Yeah. Well, I sort of noticed that even a lot of atheists have to sort of give in to this idea that they have to accept that it's possible.
Depending on the definition of God, I think that's true.
Right. Well, yeah, and no one ever defines what their God is exactly, but I guess it bothers me because to these people, it is clear to them that things like unicorns and dragons are mythological creatures and that they don't exist. So to them, that's very clear. But if you let them know that, for example, to me, it is very obvious that a god or that gods are also mythological creatures and that there's no possible way that...
But see, I don't personally equate those two. For example, I'll grant you that a unicorn is a mythological creature, and I don't believe that unicorns actually exist. But I have to leave the possibility open because, first of all, I'd say that it's vastly more likely that a unicorn exists than any god I've ever heard defined. Yeah. So just because our concept of something is, as far as we can tell, entirely man-made and mythological, doesn't mean that thing doesn't exist. Leaving open the possibility is just a matter of intellectual honesty. It doesn't add any credibility to the claim. If some Yahoo comes running in here right now to say, holy crap, there's a unicorn out on the lawn out here, I would hope that somebody here would at least go out and take a look to see maybe, what it was or what it wasn't. But that claim, I'm not going to believe that claim simply because I haven't ruled out all possibility of it existing.
But I think that that's taking it too far, because in a very practical, real-life sense, we understand that it's a mythological creature that was created in our minds, and it's really, I guess it's fun to maybe entertain the notion that it's possible, but we shouldn't live that way. We shouldn't think about it that way, because it's only the expression I've heard before is mental masturbation, where it's just sort of fun to imagine that maybe that's possible, but just in a very practical...
But that's not what I'm talking about. I don't say, for example, whether we're talking about unicorns or God, I don't assert that it's absolutely impossible for either of them to exist. It has nothing to do with whether or not it might be fun to think about them. I do not excuse unicorns, fairies, pixies, mermaids, leprechauns, or gods from the absolute certainty category just because I might like to think about them. Well, it's because I'm being intellectually honest and because that I understand that we can talk about things in two different contexts. One is a matter of practical certainty. I am practically certain that there are no unicorns and leprechauns or gods, but I'm not absolutely certain. And we get ourselves in trouble when we assert absolute certainty on issues like that. All you've done when you do that is provided ammunition to the other party to make the claim, and rightfully, that you are closed-minded, that you are not open to evidence, that you are unwilling to change your mind, and therefore you are a lost cause. That's what you're actually doing when you assert absolute certainties. You don't have to do that. You can still say the God claims, the mermaid claims, the unicorn claims, these are nuts. There is a virtual certainty, a near certainty that these things don't exist. And until you provide evidence to support them, I don't need to waste another moment thinking about them. But when you use the phrase absolute certainty, you've crossed a line over into a new category, and it causes nothing but trouble, which is why for years now, I've just flatly rejected absolute certainty as a useful or practical phrase for anything beyond the esoteric, labels, logical absolutes, things like that.
I totally understand what you're saying, and I do agree to a large extent, but I don't even want to leave that crack in the door available for a believer. In my mind, when a person asks me whether I'm an atheist or an agnostic, I just say, I'm an atheist. I don't think there's any possibility that...
But atheist doesn't mean absolute certainty that no gods exist. It doesn't mean... And when you say you don't want to leave that crap in the door, what I was trying to explain to you is that by asserting absolute certainty, you've left crap in the door. By asserting a practical certainty, you haven't. That's the only difference.
I wouldn't use that term, an absolute certainty.
But you did.
Say that, no, I would just say that I understand that mythological creatures are creatures that we created in our mind, and God is one of those creatures. And I more or less would leave it at that.
Well, you've just asserted something. You've just asserted something that you can't prove.
Well, it's not up to me to prove.
Yes, it is.
We know that we create mythological creatures. We have a long history of creating them. So we know that. It's not something that's up for debate. Everyone accepts the fact that we create creatures in our mind.
Yes, but you've made an assertion about a specific... You've made an assertion, you've made a logical fallacy. You have said, because we have created gods and we know that those gods are fictitious, therefore this God that you're talking about is fictitious. And that is a logical fallacy, and that's what I'm trying to point out. I know you're talking about practical reality, and in that area we're actually in agreement. I'm talking about the specifics of the language you use that make the difference between being somebody who is rational, who is making arguments, who is that are not fallacious, that do not shift the burden of proof, and that do not close off conversation. Those are the points that I'm making. When you make this assertion that we've created gods, and therefore this God that somebody else is citing is man-made, you've made an assertion that has shifted the burden of proof to you, and it's one that you cannot possibly defend. And that's the same reason I avoid absolute certainty.
I see.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about why you seem to need absolute certainty.
Well, I don't think about it as terms of absolute certainty. I think about it in the sense of just a very practical, day-to-day, real-life experience.
But that's
because
not...
I feel that this sort of the comments or the way you're expressing it is more philosophical.
I'm not
interested in philosophical. I'm just interested in life today. And
well, the thing. Let me tell you something. I'm an engineer, and I don't deal with absolute certainties ever as an engineer. And there are just an absolute certainty ever. But for practical purposes, for example, if I design, let's say an airplane, I can't guarantee you that airplane is not going to crash, that the parts on it are not going to fail. What I can do is design it such that my uncertainty about that is very, very low. And I can quantify that. And then I can design a factor of safety into that so that it increases my level of certainty that things will not fail and this thing is not going to crash and kill people. But I can't ever guarantee with 100% certainty about anything. And that's the same thing that happens with anything. And so, do you drive a car?
Yes, right.
Okay. And you go into buildings?
Yes, right.
And you drive over bridges?
Yes.
Okay. There is no guarantee that those things aren't going to kill you. But you accept that level of uncertainty and you go about your life without even thinking about it every day. So you deal with uncertainty every day. And it's not even something that you even think about too much.
As a matter of just...
So that's true. But for example, to use the car analogy, we all know that cars were not around 200 years ago. And we have an understanding of when they came about. And I think ideas are similar. We have an understanding of when a particular idea or a certain concept was was developed or how it was developed.
But the thing
For
is,
example, again, a unicorn.
No.
We all understand that.
No,
that
no,
was
no.
You've missed the
yellow
point.
concept that
No.
was developed in our head.
No.
you missed the point.
Not only did you miss your point, but now you're going on to assert that we have a good level of knowledge sufficient to talk about the creation of ideas in our history. Do you not realize that this is an area of considerable debate? The history of religion, the creation of the concepts of God. This is a hotly debated topic amongst anthropologists, and you're now saying that your armchair analysis is that we really know when roughly these concepts came in and that therefore they're all made. And you're leading yourself right back to the same fallacy that I pointed out before. As a matter of practical conversation, not only do you not need absolute certainty, which was the big point I was getting to, and the point that Jen made, but I'm fine with saying there are no gods. I say that all the time. It's a colloquialism that I don't object to. But when I say that, I am not saying I am absolutely certain that there are no things called gods or that would qualify as gods under any circumstances. That's not what I'm saying.
Well, what I'm saying is that I'm certain that it is a mythological creature because
Then you're wrong.
Because that's how all mythological creatures have come about. There is no
Boy, that's you just added circular reasoning on top of that.
Well, let me just say that everywhere we look in the universe, there is no suggestion that mythological creatures or magic exist. Nowhere.
Well,
and again, we can get philosophical and say that maybe somewhere there is magic. But I think that's just a philosophical perspective. In a very practical sense, that just doesn't happen. We are not aware of that anywhere.
I agree.
So
I agree,
the
but
notion that it might be real to me just seems a little. It just I guess the reason why I'm going to this extreme is because people hold on to this very, very small, entertaining notion, and then they just run away with it.
I agree, but it doesn't do any good.
You know,
I agree, but it does no good for you to exaggerate the claims, because now you have run the opposite direction at breakneck speed. You don't further any conversation, you don't lead any resolution, and the people who took this slim idea and ran this way, who may need you to say, look, just because we don't necessarily eliminate all possibility doesn't mean that it's likely, doesn't mean that we should run away with it. Now they've lost that opportunity because you want to exaggerate beyond the bounds of logic and commit logical fallacies in the process. If I was a theist and you came to me with those arguments, I would rip them to shred and make you look foolish. It is a poor way to do. You don't have to go that far. And the thing is, you and I are on the same page when we talk about from a practical standpoint. We talk about speaking colloquially. You mentioned before, we've seen no evidence of this magic and there's no good reason to think it's true. That is perfect. That's all you ever need to say, because that is a direct challenge that keeps the burden of proof in their court and does not go so far as to assert an absolute certainty. You've got it all right there. You know exactly what you need to do. You don't need to run as far. You don't run when they're not chasing you.
Matt, you did mention, though, that anthropologists are debating where certain ideas came from.
Sure.
And just from what I see, and I'm not a scholar by any means, but I think that we do have a fairly good idea of where certain ideas first sprouted and how they developed and just became more and more popular.
But that doesn't shed any light on.
We're not in the dark about where certain ideas came from. I guess some more than others, but something like, just any mythological creature, a Greek god, for example.
A dragon.
Yeah, a dragon. We can.
Please tell me how the idea of a dragon came about. Did it come about because somebody spotted a snake and decided to add wings to it? Or did somebody come about because somebody spotted a bird and decided to put it with a reptile? Or maybe a bird was carrying a reptile.
It was a dinosaur.
Or maybe,
It was a dinosaur.
So did this come about as an extrapolation from something that they actually saw? Or was this a fanciful production? And exactly, roughly, give me within 500 years when this concept first appeared. Not when we first have a record of it appearing, but when it first appeared. And demonstrate that it didn't actually arise because there was something that was dragon-like at that time. Can you do that?
Well, I think that archaeologists can pinpoint
No.
different...
The answer
can't.
to my question is
Let me
no.
just finish the comment. I mean, when you look at, for example, Latin America, and you see dragon-like creatures in their writings or in their sculptures, you get an idea of when those particular creatures became popular. Or when you look in Asia, you see the same thing. In Europe as well. So you more or less get an idea of when these creatures became popular in those cultures.
Which is relevant to what point anywhere on the planet?
It's relevant because we can see a pattern of people inventing a creature in their mind.
And why is that relevant?
It's relevant because it substantiates the fact that people create these magical things in their head.
But we
So
already
what?
knew that. The thing that you're not getting, the one and only answer to the question I asked a minute ago was no, not 45 seconds on we can approximate. The answer was no. You can't, because you have no idea when these concepts first appeared. You may be able to determine the oldest known occurrence of these concepts. Yes, you can judge their popularity in different places, but none of that matters. Because you still cannot demonstrate a link between this concept came into awareness and popularity in this area and it's because of X. You cannot demonstrate that because we created a fictional thing, A, that anything else that's like A is therefore fictional. You can't do that. That's the point that I was trying to make before. It's a logical fallacy and you're shooting yourself in the foot for trying.
Well, I guess, Matt, the big thing for me is that we've established a pattern of behavior of creating creatures in our minds.
So what?
And so when someone tells me that I believe in this particular magical creature, until they actually have evidence and they go out and prove that that creature exists, I'm just going to say I believe this is just another one of those creatures that are created in people's heads, and
which is fine.
Yeah, that's all you have
Which
to
is
say.
fine.
Until they can actually prove it.
Fine.
Fine.
But and I guess I do take it a little step further, because at the same time I'm just saying, you know what? Not only that, but I just think it's ridiculous, and no, there's no way that it exists. I'm not even going to entertain the notion that
And
it
that's
might
where you
exist.
cross the
And
line.
you don't
again.
have to do that. And we
Yeah.
got too cold.
Maybe it's because it really pisses me off that people
Great.
so easily
At least you're
accept
starting to recognize that instead of making
Yeah.
a logical argument, you're making an emotional one. But you're going to do what you need to do. I've tried to explain the fallacies 3 or 4
No,
times
I
now.
agree
But
with you.
but,
I
but
do
that's
take it a step too far.
I got other callers waiting, and we only got like 13 minutes left, so I got to let you go, man.
Thank you, Matt.